Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Reverence for Reverie. And yeah, we have entered November. And in my corner of the world, it is that space where the light kind of fades a little earlier. The air seems like it's carrying a different kind of stillness with it. And in general, everything in nature just really seems to whisper to us to begin to slow down. And yet, we also live in a culture, at least I do, where that is not what the collective cultural energies are at this time of year. And I feel like there's always something really sacred about this time of year because the veil is thinner. We've just moved from Samhain and the earth is beginning to quiet. Our bodies, if we let them, really begin to remember the rhythm beneath all of the noise. And this month's energy feels very deeply cyclical, almost like the turning of a great wheel. And I don't think that's just by coincidence. I think that really is what the energies of the season call for. But I pulled a few cards to help me listen a little more closely to what might be moving in the collective field right now. And I'm going to take this time to walk you through them. Now, as a reminder, I don't see using the cards as predictors, but more like invitations for communion with the unconscious and what's kind of moving below the surface. Help us get in touch with that a little more. I see these conversations kind of as a doorway, really. And these are symbols in the cards that help us remember what's already true beneath the surface. So let's move forward. The first card that came forward is from the Native American Oracle Cards deck by Laura Tuan, Massimo, Rotundo, and Kaya Walker. And the first card was called Heavens. And when I look at this card, what really stands out to me immediately is the unity of the sun and the moon, the light, excuse me, and the dark. And all of it is kind of gathered together in this beautiful harmony. And it really feels like a reminder of the greater whole, that nothing exists in isolation. Every polarity, every contrast that we experience is all a part of the same living system. There's a rhythm to all of it, a pulse that's really moving through beginnings and endings, light and shadow, rest and movement. I know I'm really feeling a lot of that lately. And right now, it feels like this card is really asking us to widen our aperture, to maybe look at the bigger picture of our lives and the world around us. It's so easy to get really caught up in all of the details and to feel like we've got to fix something or we've got to rush toward clarity. But I feel like this Heavens card really reminds us, at least with how it's speaking to me here in this moment, that everything belongs. Everything is a part of this greater cycle. And so as I sat with that, the next deck I pulled from, this is from the Medicine Woman Oracle by Catherine Maillard, and the artwork was done by Carolyn Manière. But the cards just deepened this same message. So the two cards that came forward were Interconnection and Your Body's Power. I smiled when I saw them because it does just feel like spirit or consciousness or source, whatever you'd like to refer to it as, was saying, yes, keep going in that direction, right? It's all a part of the whole. So the interconnection card brings this moment from kind of an I-ness to the we-ness. It's about dissolving this illusion of separation, the sense that we're just these isolated individuals all trying to figure it out alone. Lately, I've really been thinking so much about community and really about intentional, reverent spaces that really honor diversity and difference and make room for the whole spectrum of the human experience. Because I believe that healing, really in its truest form, doesn't and can't fully happen in isolation. It happens in relationship with one another, with the earth, with our bodies, which of course leads to this next card that I pulled, Your Body's Power. And that one really landed in me deeply because when I see this card, what's depicted, of course, is the female body. And I think of the cycles that it holds, the endurance that it carries, and the way creation and release or death live side by side in the womb. Very much like the mother that we live on, the earth, right? Birth and death, renewal, shedding, all of this contained in the same sacred space. Again, it's such a mirror for the earth herself. Just, the constant giving, taking, growing, composting, holding on to, letting go. All of this really is encapsulated in the feminine way, in the maternal, in the earth, right? And there's this invitation right now to really come back to the body, not as some abstract idea, right? But like as a real living landscape, to feel her, to listen. Because I think it is really through that sensation, through the felt sense, that we begin to awaken to what really wants to be transformed next. And that alchemy cannot happen if we are disconnected, if we're too busy, too numb, too overstimulated, right? The transformation actually begins when we slow down enough to hear the whispers, because that's really what happens. It's subtle. It is whispers. And then from the last deck I pulled from, this was the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. Oh my goodness, it's one of my favorite tarot decks. And it really brought everything else into sharper focus. So 2 cards again, the 7 of Wands and the 6 of Pentacles. Now, the 7 of Wands carries this energy of perseverance. It's this moment where you're standing around, you're holding the light, and there may be some resistance that's beginning to build. You might feel kind of alone, but this is the kind of like solitary sort of strength, which feels maybe a little contradicting to what I'm saying about community, right? But this kind of strength, it's not loud, it's not forceful. It's quiet conviction that comes from knowing that you are aligned with something true, even when no one else around you is seeing that vision or bringing it forward themselves. And so it really made me think of those collective energies again right now, like how, when light of some kind or when conscious awareness starts to break through, those that are invested in keeping things hidden get much louder, right? The same rings true for internally, inside of us in the therapy process. As we start to come into contact with our reality and allowing ourselves to know what we know beneath the surface. The parts of our psyche that are invested in protection and not allowing that to come forward will get louder and attempt to kind of pull us back, right? They start to push back. They pull things back into the shadows. And we see that on a collective level happening right now as well. But that is not a sign to stop. It's actually the sign we must keep going, right? Because that resistance only shows up right before an expansion is about to happen. So then I move on to the 6 of Pentacles, and it just comes sort of like a soft exhale from my perspective. It is the reminder of reciprocity, generosity, the cycle of giving and receiving. of abundance that will move and circulate rather than hoard and accumulate. And I've really been noticing this theme play out in a lot of tangible ways. Communities coming together when there are resources that are scarce, and people beginning to pool what they have in order to care for one another when the larger systems at play are not being very caring. It's kind of like the universal way of saying, you don't have to hold it all. Just stay in the flow, which, by the way, is so hard. I struggle with this too, right? But when you give, you also open yourself up to receive. And when you receive, you're creating the space to give. Again, they're very interconnected, right? So when I lay all of these cards, all of the ones that I've just talked about, side by side from all three decks, what really stands out to me across all of them is the symbolism of circles. Every single one of them has a prominent or multiple prominent circular patterns. There's mandalas, sunbursts, spirals, across all of them, there are circles. And that just feels so symbolic of this moment we're in too. The recognition of these cycles, everything moving in rhythm, vitality, real vitality, aliveness. It comes not from constant doing, but from really honoring the turn of the wheel, so to speak, right? And as I keep seeing this image of the sunburst, it's reminding me of like the moment when those light areas break through after darkness, when something hidden really begins to emerge and reveal itself. That is what's happening now, is what it feels like. Big change is coming. You can feel it in the collective field. If you're still enough, in tune enough with the energies at hand, I think we can all feel something is happening. But it's not time to force it, right? It's really time to prepare for it. And from my perspective, it's by rest, by listening, by really tending to the inner soil right now in this moment. I keep feeling this kind of dual current, even in myself. On one hand, I have this call to like slow down, to go inward, to soften, be receptive, rest, right? And yet, on the other hand, there is almost this undercurrent, a feeling of like mounting urgency, a fear that if we don't act fast, or if I don't do enough, something is going to pass us by. And I know that fear is not the truth, but that urgency certainly is a product of the culture that has really forgotten the wisdom of the seasons. And, I mentioned this earlier in the opening line that, we, at least again, in the corner of the world that I'm in, the seasons are asking us to do something, and yet we're propelled into a late capitalistic culture of do more, spend more, be more, keep going, right? As though we should be blossoming and blooming, like we should be spring and summer year round, instead of the fall and winter that we are moving into, right? So as nature is slowing down, the trees are letting go. The earth is turning inward. There is a compost, a decay that is beginning to happen. We're part of that rhythm. We are meant to mirror it. And so if you're asking, am I suggesting that you rot in bed? Yes. I mean, it doesn't have to look like that, but right? Like the earth is composting. Why don't we? Anyway, so if your body is asking for rest though, or reflection, or a stillness, I think you need to trust it. You're not falling behind. Actually, what comes to mind as I say that, you're not falling behind, you're actually syncing up. You're getting into the rhythm as it should be, right? So this month, I really just invite you to give yourself permission to be still. Curl up with a blanket, make a warm cup of tea or coffee. Sit in the dark, listen to what's stirring beneath the surface. Let yourself rot in bed for a little while. Because what is coming next, I think the next wave of creation and of movement and of revelation is going to need you to be grounded and nourished and more connected to yourself than you've ever been. So, as we move through November, I hope that you just remember that everything, even your pauses, are all a part of this greater rhythm of becoming. There is no wasted time in the cycle of wholeness. There are just different expressions of the same divine breath, and they move in rhythm. So take care of your body, take care of the earth, of course, and take care of your communities, join communities, trust the circle that you're in, that it's carrying you exactly where you need to be. So thank you as always for listening, for being a part of this shared field and web of connection that we're in. And if this message resonated with you, I would love to hear what you're noticing in your own life this month. I'll have all of the links that you can contact me at in the show notes. And of course, if this resonates with you, it's always helpful if you leave a review and share this with a friend to invite them into what we're doing together here. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and let the reverie lead you. Bye for now.